My name is Bernard Dykes. D as in David, Y-K-E-S. I was a sergeant first class in the U.S. Army.
Mm-hmm.
I was a tank commander in Korea. I volunteered for and I went to Korea. I was born in Port Washington, Long Island, New York. And I went through the Port Washington school system. I had what would you call, or what you could call, a cup of coffee at New York University, the School of Commerce. I was involved with the humanities. Then the Korean War, of course, broke out, and my reserve unit was recalled to service. I served in 1948 for that 1 year. They called it a Truman year, and it meant that an individual could volunteer for 1 year's service, and then he would then get out and be put into a reserve unit for 6 years, active reserve. And in that time, it was a short period of time, from 48 to 49 active, and then inactive was almost 1 year and a half before the Korean War broke out, and when our unit was activated. So that I immediately went into the Army once again for a total of 3 years and several months. I, of course, went to, volunteered for, and went to Korea.
How about your family?
Actually, I was not married at that particular time. When I was volunteered and went to Korea, I was 20 years old and unmarried and corresponding with my future wife.
Have you heard about Korea? What was your first impression? When was it that you first heard of the breakout of the Korean War?
I'm almost certain that it was June 25th, 1950, when the papers were just full of the news that the North Koreans had invaded the Republic of South Korea. And immediately I thought my unit would definitely be called up, the reserve unit. But I had no idea of where Korea was, nor what was the extent of the invasion by the North. And my first thought was, well, I don't believe it will last very long, because I know that we're going to be sending troops. And as it turned out, of course, 21 nations, other than including America, were involved with the making sure that the communist North would not annihilate the Republic of Korea South.
So you never heard about Korea before?
Not at all, sir. My education, geography, history and such did not go into that area, let's say, or else perhaps I missed it in history class.
So exactly where you were you in the school or you were
No, I was at home at the time.
So you were not attending school?
No, at the time I was not attending school. I was involved with a mason's helper at the time, an apprentice.
Okay. So what did you feel about that you had to go there and you might lose your own life?
I didn't give it really that much thought. When you're 20 years old, that is to say, actually I was 19, I think, let's see, at 50, I was 20 years old. I'm immortal at that time. I had the greatest training in that 1 year. My platoon sergeant was awarded the Medal of Honor in Korea in 1950. So that believe me, I had the greatest of training with West Point lieutenants and so forth. I welcomed the opportunity because I was so well trained by them to go to Korea, to do whatever I could. my mission in life was to help anybody that needed help at the time, because I was a viable individual. I made all sports I was involved with, so I felt that I could make a difference. About losing your life and such. Each time I hear that phrase, I think back on my history class in 11th grade, and it comes to mind very quickly. Cowards die many times before their death. The valiant only taste of death but once. Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. We were reading Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and the instructor asked us to put a few lines to memory. And fortunately, I chose those, because overseas in Korea, on the front line, when the heavy artillery was coming in particular, I was afraid, yes, and yet the fear left me when I recited this particular part of the Julius Caesar. And it gave me a calm. Calm did come over me each and every time. I had no control of where the next round was going to land. And with that in mind, my life was no longer in my hands. I was in the Army, of course, the United States Army, and my rank indicated that I was a sergeant, staff sergeant.
From the beginning?
No, actually, when I went in as a corporal, as a private, and in very short order, I was made a sergeant, and I put men through basic training.
Where?
At Camp Pickett, Virginia.
Virginia.
I was a cadre, as they call them. In the Marine Corps, they call it drill sergeant. I was one of those and enjoyed that. But then I got the opportunity, along with a number of others, to go to Fort Knox, which was a tank gunnery instructor school. I graduated out of that Fort Knox.
Around when?
This was about May 1951. May 1951. Then we were immediately transported to California, Mojave Desert, where we opened up, or reopened up, the largest gunnery range in America. Patton opened it up in the early 50s to train people for the North African campaign. I would have to say, for the express, the Korean War, of course, didn't exist in 1948.
Right.
But my training literally prepared me for whatever came, whatever war came, and that's basically what I think America should continue, just that type of thing, so that we're constantly ready, like the Israelis, 2 years or whatever they have to spend in it. At any rate, I would say for the Korean War would have been when we were recalled in September of 1950, right?
So you were recalled to serve in
correct.
the Army in September 1950.
Yes.
So about 3 months after the Korean War broke out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you went to series of military training, including tanks, right?
I was, my whole career was in the tank corps.
And when did you finish your military training here to be assigned to Korea?
I was in the Mojave Desert as a tank gunnery instructor, so that I had so much training that I was training others, and I felt I could make some difference in Korea because of that training. I could come in on target, oftentimes in 2 rounds, as opposed to 4 or 5 rounds. And I said, this is ridiculous. I'm here. I should be there. And that's the reason I joined, to go to Korea and expressly to the front line.
What was your rank when you were ready to leave for
Sergeant.
Korea? Sergeant. Okay,
Staff sergeant.
Now I understand. Do you remember what date that you arrived in Korea for the first time?
I'm just going by memory now. I wish I had my DD-214. It would have told me exactly. But to the best of my knowledge, it was January 4th of 1952.
1952.
That is correct.
How did you get into Korea?
I came by way of a boat, of course, to ship to Incheon. And thank goodness we arrived at high tide so that it was just walking off the ship onto the soil of Korea.
Could you describe the first impression when you arrived in Korea? And what was it like? Describe it for me so that the future generations can have some idea about what happened during the Korea.
Right. Well, again, at the age of 20, excitement was the big thing. It was something new. When we landed and we were on the shore. It looked like my uncle's farm in Long Island because it was all farmland that we could see as we walked to the trucks and such for transportation, and then by way of railroad to our destination. A repo depot where they would select individuals to go into different, wherever they were needed, infantry, artillery, and tanks and so forth. I felt that I would definitely go into tanks with my training, and it worked out exactly that way. I didn't see devastation. I saw farming. I didn't see a building to speak of because Incheon, again, it was flat and basically farm area as I recall, and all along the route, we didn't see any kind of city. Yes, houses and such, you know, huts and what have you. But my memory serves me right. Nothing that I could say I remember seeing that. The service that I had was the first few days we spent chogying up or climbing up hills to keep in shape, because again it was in the heart of the winter months and it was cold. But here I came from the Mojave Desert to the coldness, let's say, of Korea. But I'm born on Long Island, raised on Long Island, and we had cold weather also, so that it wasn't intolerable at all. And then I got my orders to go to the front with the 2nd Infantry Division, which I was in 1948. So to me, it was great. I just smiled and I said, this is wonderful. I'm back home.
My old
my old outfit, right, my old patch and such. And of course, I was assigned to be a tank commander. But I had to wait 7 days because the tank commander on Tank 12 would rotate then, and I would take over.
Could you describe what do you mean by tank commander? How many tanks under your leadership?
There are 5 tanks in a platoon, and that's what I was, a tank commander of 1 tank. However, a very interesting thing happened 4 days after I was there. The lieutenant, our platoon leader, had me as his in his tank until our tank 12 was cleared, so I could become the tank commander in it. And he said, "This is our first patrol." He said, "You're riding with me as a loader." Now, a loader is probably the lowest man in the tank itself, you know, but that's the spot that was open, so fine. His tank had 2 50 caliber machine guns on it. Usually you only have 1 on an M4A3 E8. It's a Sherman tank. It's an older tank, but it had a 76 millimeter tank gun cannon on it. Anyway, we were out for about a half hour, and all of a sudden we took small arms fire, and he immediately got onto his.
Where was it?
This was in Kumwa area. The exact area I don't.
North of Seoul, right?
Pardon me?
North
of Seoul. Yes.
Yeah.
And he took a round that was his hand was bleeding, and he said, he nudged me. I was on my 50 caliber, and he nudged me and he said, "My gun is jammed." So the training that I had, that I felt that I could make some difference because of, I immediately climbed 3/4 of the way out of the turret, which is the loader's turret, and reached up, and I pulled back on the operating handle of the 50 caliber machine gun, opened up the top cover plate, and I noticed that there was a bent round, and I was only hoping that it wasn't going to be a ruptured cartridge, because they're difficult. You can't really change them in the heat of a battle. So it was a bent round. I merely pulled it out, threw it over the side, ran the linkage belt through, down with the top cover plate, and back with the operating handle, and I hit the butterfly triggers, and it went just. I said, "Sir, your gun is back in action." And he didn't say anything more other than get on his, and he said, "Everything that moves," he said, "just destroy." And we did just that for a period of time, and nothing moved. We moved back. He didn't say anything going on the way back, nor he went to his bunker after we came back. The next morning, he called all of the other tank commanders and myself to his tank, which I was a part of, and he said, "If I go down, Sergeant Dykes takes over the platoon." Now I'm there 7 days in Korea, 4 days on front line, and already I said to myself, "Gee, this is the greatest." I said, "I'm second in command to a platoon of tanks."
How many tanks?
Again, there's 5 tanks.
5 tanks.
Right.
So you were in charge of 5 tanks.
I was now an assistant platoon leader.
Yeah.
Right. Now, these other fellows had been there before me, but it was obvious that they didn't have the training that I had. See, I was in the right place at the right time with the right training. And it just proved that, yes, you can make any kind of, a small difference.
So again, it was January 1951.
That is correct.
So could you
No, I'm sorry, 1952.
52, January 1952.
That is correct.
And when did you end your service in Korea?
It was, to the best of my knowledge, without my my DD-214, July 15th or so of the same year, 1952.
52.
And the only reason, we were 6 solid months on the front line, but we came back into reserve area, and all of a sudden, about a week there of getting our tank ready to go back up again, someone came to me. I don't know if it was a orderly room fellow, or, from the company commander or what. But I went into his office, and he said, "You're going home." I said, "Going home?" I said, "How is that possible?" He said, "Your time of enlistment is up. You have to go home or re-up for a few more years." And I thought to myself, that's incredible. At any rate, I opted, of course, then to come home. I've spent the 7 months in Korea, and I felt that I would only spend 5 more months tops, and it was time. The reason I didn't want to go back up was with a new company, a new platoon leader, who was probably the worst platoon leader I could have ever have gotten. He came out of a ROTC program. He knew literally nothing about tanks, and here I was going to put my life in his hands as a leader, and me as second in command. I felt that it was something that it wouldn't work out. He was too green, and he would have control of the platoon. So that's the reason I said, if that's the case, I'll go home, and that's what I did.
So, while you were in Korea, you were mostly in Gunghwa area?
It basically that area there,
Who
the
was the
Iron
enemy?
Triangle.
Was it North Koreans or Chinese?
In front of us was North Korea. It was Chinese at 1062. That's the huge Papa Zon, I guess they called it, because it was such a huge mountain, 1,062 feet.
Do you remember the name of that mountain?
I believe it was Papasan, they called it, but it was 1062 on our charts.
Okay.
And we had it all zeroed in because I was a tank gunnery instructor. So I had all of the guns focused there, that is to say, in range of all of the areas that they would be coming through. And we were supporting the French, which were a great bunch of soldiers. They were the Free French Army. And I befriended a number of those. They, in fact, attempted to teach me how to speak French.
What was it like?
There really
Was
wasn't
it
battle.
every
There
day?
were patrols and such. But the battles would have to had come, as it did, after I rotated in, I believe, June of 1953. It erupted in that particular area. I think the 7th Division was there at the time, and all hell broke loose because we then attempted to retake Heartbreak Ridge, which was right in the Iron Triangle area as well, along with Pork Chop Hill, and countless lives were lost. And finally, we just gave up on Heartbreak Ridge and Pork Chop Hill because it served no purpose. The armistice or the ceasefire was imminent. So that was that.
Then what was like patrolling around that area with the tank? Could you describe anecdote or any one day particularly that you remember?
Well, the day I remember most was the very first because it was so fresh in my mind. But I'll never forget the euphoria that I had, that I was where I wanted to be because I volunteered to be there. Others, unfortunately, were drafted, and that's why they were there. But I chose to be there, and if something happened to me, it was my fault, not anyone else's. But that was probably the first and the most exciting because of the newness of it. The feeling that, yes, you could die at any moment.
So patrolling around that area,
Right.
what was it like? You were following French soldiers?
No, actually the soldiers were stationary. They had their quad 50s and platoons of foot soldiers and such. But mostly it was the 50 caliber quads and such, you know, that all were along the line.
So mostly you didn't move around with the tank, but you were stationed
Other than
with the
patrols,
French.
no.
Other than patrol. So
Right.
I'm asking, what was it like patrolling around that area?
Again, each time it was exciting because you didn't know what was going to take place. And my thoughts always went back to my company commander that I had in 1948. He was only 28 years old, a graduate of the military academy at West Point, and he was my basketball coach as well as my golf coach. We had teams when we were back in the service. I was #1 man on the golf team and starting 5 on the basketball team. At any rate, he was the coach of both. And he unfortunately was there 15 days in September of 1950 when he was cut down in the turret of his tank. The tank commander is from here up exposed to fire. And that's, of course, where I was, the tank commander's position.
Any moment where that you were targeted by Chinese or?
I don't know. It would have been random type of the small arms fire was, I'm sure, random. The heavy artillery was the probably the most. It was almost constant. They say in that area, more artillery fell than raindrops. And it's something that testifies to the fact that when I was in my tank or a bunker, I had time to think, and that's where I thought about that 11th grade English when I made mention of cowards die many times before their death. You had time to reflect on life. It was precious, and yet at the same time, you were there to do whatever you could.
So while you were there were artillery attack
Oh, it
toward
was
your
almost constant, yeah.
constant. How did you feel about it? I mean, it was
Well, each and
must be
every
horrible.
round, you don't know where that next round is going to land. And you say to yourself that your life is no longer in your hands. It's a case where it's in God's hands. And I thank Him every single night of my life, just by way of saying He enabled me to come back home, to marry, to have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and thank goodness get to be the age of 82. This is, to me, just God's will. And again, as I say, I thank Him each and every night.
So how did you survive
I was one
that?
of the lucky ones, by the way.
How did you survive all those artillery attacks? Were you on the bunker or?
Either in the tank or on the bunker. A direct hit would have, yes, annihilated the tank. A direct hit would have annihilated, yes, the bunker. But thank goodness, by the grace of God, neither one were taken out. So that, as I say, one of the lucky ones.
Were your friends killed by that artillery attack?
Our area, our 5 tank members, 5 tank crew members, that's 25 individuals, were not injured. And it was just by the grace of God, as I said, because the way they hit. I recall once in particular, I'm conferring with the platoon leader, the lieutenant, and all of a sudden a heavier than usual artillery barrage came incoming. And I said, sir, I'll get back to my tank. And I just ran across the road as fast as I could. It's a dirt, you know, about 50 yards or so, and zigzagging and such. But the rounds were landing, and thank goodness I wasn't hit by any shrapnel, and got back to the tank and climbed aboard.
Wow. What was life like in during your service? What kind of food, where you sleep, and how was it?
Well, the food, unfortunately, was the barest necessities, and the reason for it was the artillery. Before I got there, a week, 2 weeks before I got there, they had trucks coming up from the rear with 1 hot meal a day. Well, that ceased 2 weeks before I got there, because they were getting too much artillery coming in. Each time the truck would come in, artillery would come in and attempt to knock it out. With that in mind, we had, when I got there, it was nothing more than sea rations. So you ate literally out of a can or a little heater. But it was the life that you had to lead. And I didn't complain. I don't think many of the other guys complained. It was what it was.
Were you sleeping under the tent or?
No, actually, either in the tank or in the bunker. And the bunker, of course, was made up of ammo cartons and a air mattress. So that was basically it. And naturally, in the wintertime, as it were, in January when I got there, you know, a sleeping bag, of course, which was great. Best thing that was ever invented, I think, you know. But that was basically the way you did.
No heating at all?
Yeah, there was heating, and I didn't know where or who kept it up. But there was a kerosene type of thing on the outside, and it gave off a small degree of heat, but it was at least not the terrible, the low temperatures you had outside. So that was, again, a blessing.
Is there space for you to sleep inside of the tank?
5 men are in the tank, but there's only 4 at one given time because there's always 1 on the tank for a guard. And that's basically it. It was a case that you had, they were all together so that you didn't have any just one, you know, cot, let's say. It was all, the ammo cases were across, the empty ammo cases were across, and you slept with your sleeping bag on top, and your air mattress.
How many can sleep together at the same time?
Well, again, four.
Four?
Right.
That
yeah.
that spacious enough?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because people would not have any idea of how inside of the tank.
Right. Oh, inside of a tank, you could sleep five, of course, but you'd have to be sleeping sitting up.
Sitting
So
up,
we've
right?
got-
Yeah.
There was no room. You got the driver, the assistant driver, and the gunner, and the loader, and of course the tank commander. But it was difficult to say the least, because the tank in the wintertime was as cold as you could get with the metal. 4 inches of homogeneous steel around the turret, and it stays cold. But in the summertime, of course, you burn up because it holds the heat with the OD, the color of the tank.
What were the most difficult, and happiest and rewarding memories during your service?
Well, the rewarding and happiest and rewarding memories would be the feeling of fulfillment. I did exactly what I wanted to do, and was fortunate enough to come back sound of body and sound of mind.
And most difficult time that you can remember, the moment that was most difficult?
I'll be perfectly frank with you. I don't recall a difficult time, only because my mindset was I'm there to do a particular job. And my competitive spirit said I wanted to do it as well or better than anyone else. And that kept me in good stead. The feeling of accomplishment, as I mentioned before, overrode everything. I was doing something, and I was attempting to make as much of a difference as I possibly could.
So what did you feel about you returning to home, and what was the reaction of the people?
Well, the very first reaction to coming upon American soil once again was through under the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And when we tied up to the dock, there was a opera singer singing, "Come, come, I love you only." My hero, the name of the song is, and that was very heartwarming. And they had a little band there, so accompanying her. That to me spoke very well, and I'm only wishing that could have happened to, that experience could have been to all of the soldiers. I don't recall people saying, where have you been, It's just a great town that word of mouth travels so fast, and so many of us in my class were in the service, so that people were aware of the fact that, he's come home and he's in one piece. When I came back from Korea, I still had that great feeling of accomplishment and worthwhileness. It actually affected all of my life, that experience at that age. The thing that I was so gratified by is when I joined the Central Long Island chapter of the Korean War veterans, and we would march in New York City. And sometimes it was 5, 6 deep, and the Korean population, which of course is vast in Flushing and so forth, which we marched there as well. And in the city and in Flushing, they're saying, "Thank you for saving our country. Thank you for saving our country." And this is so gratifying that they feel so emotional about the fact that, yes, the Americans did go and send the troops and the treasure, the munitions and so forth, to free our country. And I'm just amazed at what the South Korean populace has done with the country that we left in shambles. I didn't see the shambles in Seoul, but they told me about it. I saw just farmland and mountains and so forth, but they tell me it was just horrific. the thing that I'm so my feelings are that that is to say, the Korean populace and the military had to lose so many wonderful, caring individuals over there. The numbers are staggering. I don't know if you have a figure on it, but I have here just something that I wanted to bring up, because when I looked at it and read it, I said, oh my God, we lost, of course, 103,000, we lost 55,000 troops, 103,000 wounded, 7,000 POWs, and 8,000 still missing in action. Actually, that 8,000 number is now down to about 7,900, because they've been finding the missing in action, the MIAs. So, but the thing that struck me when I looked at the statistics, and it's staggering, and it's something that everyone should realize, that war is horrific in any of its forms. The stats here, the tragedy came to, of course, South Korea on the 25th of June 1950. The military and the civilian population suffered greatly. The military incurred 571,000 dead, killed, 950,000 wounded, 85,000 POWs, 460,000 MIAs.
What is the source of that statistic?
This is a statistic from 4 different periodicals, so that and there's no real count on the civilian population.
Where did you get that number?
Pardon me?
Where did you get that number?
That number came from 4 different periodicals in the...
periodicals,
right,
okay.
Right. Again, I don't know the authenticity of, but to me it was staggering. I thought, my God, I saw the devastation and such, but never realizing the extent of. And yet what the Korean people have done with their country. Right now, I believe it's 12th largest economic power in the world. And you just don't ride in a car without seeing a Korean-made vehicle. It's just testimony to what democracy and what hard work and love of country can do for a particular country, and of course, namely South Korea.
I want to say that we were not able to do it without your sacrifice. So
That's
this
very
is,
kind of you.
I think this is the legacy of the Korean War veterans, I think, right?
I believe it certainly is a legacy. The other legacy that I'd like to just leave with you is the what was said by Matthew B. Ridgway, who was the commander, supreme commander of the Allied forces. He mentioned that the communist military aggression reached its high water mark in Korea, and that thereafter communism itself began its recession in Asia. They talk about, he said that in 1951. They talk about the Berlin Wall and everything else, which of course, yes, played a big part. But communism was faced for the first time, point blank. The Russians and the Red Chinese were put to task by virtue of the 21 countries that wanted to free South Korea, so that they could show the communist world, let's say, that it wasn't going to work. They were going to be confronted, they were going to be defeated. They weren't defeated, it was a ceasefire. But believe me, it stopped communism in its tracks. Everything followed.
Next year will be 60 years anniversary of the Korean armistice. Have you heard any war lasted more than 60 years after an official ceasefire?
I know of none, I know.
Are you willing to sign the petition which will say that enough is enough? It's now in our side to call for peace treaty and end the war with the peace treaty?
I'd sign my name as quick as you could put the pen and pencil, the pen and pad in front of me.
What is your message to the future generations about the Korean War and your service?
Again, that we should not be forgotten. The fact that 3 years, 2 days, 1 month and 2 days, we're over there fighting for freedom, for a country that was just taken to task again by a superior army, the North Koreans. They took it by way of knowing full well they were being helped by the Red Chinese and the Russians. They were in T-34 tanks made by the Russians. They were attacked, the South Koreans, by way of MiGs made in Russia. It was that kind of thing. They used North Korea for what they wanted, and that was the total annihilation of, or the capture of all